Well, join me, Marcus, as I take a walk from Briton Ferry docks up to Neath Castle. Well, the walk itself is about 4.4 miles. That's about 7 kilometres each way up to Neath Castle and back. So about 9 miles in total. But the good news, because it's along the canal for most of it, it is flat. Well, the wind is picking up and it looks like rain. Look at that sky. Well, my starting point by this old jetty at the mouth of the Briton Ferry docks. I mentioned it in my last walk when I went up the incline, the Briton Ferry incline. And a lot of this was designed by Brunel, one of his last projects. He actually died in 1859 and this opened in 1861. Again, as usual, I'll mark the place on the map and I'll give you coordinates below. I can feel rain already. So that's the practical stuff out the way. I think I'll start straight away because the weather may close in. The forecast says I've got a couple of hours. So we'll see. Well, this area looks very different to how it must have looked 100 years ago. There was industry all around, a lot of tin plate works, Briton Ferry ironworks, and if you look over there you can still see an old building built in 1910, and that was the old engine room, the ironworks, and the canal basin was over there as well. And I think, was it the Albion Steelworks? Again, I'm not local to this area. I live in Porthcawl, which is about 15 miles away. But that was there until quite late, I think. I'm sure one of the old gits I have coffee with actually worked there when he was young. And that's the outer basin of the harbour. That was the tidal basin, but the inner basin, the floating harbour, there was a lock gate there, and that's been filled in. It would have been under the motorway. So that's the M4, and beyond that is the old A48. So we're heading under that. It's about a 10-minute walk to the canal itself. Have a look at this old map from the turn of the century. Look at all the steel works and ironworks and tin plate works around this area. Again, access to water and coal. So we're coming up to the hydro accumulator tower, that large dark stone square tower. And that was the mechanism that opened and shut the lock gate. I think the accumulator was supplied by William Armstrong. So there it is. The accumulator in there opened the dock gates which were there. And in that dip, that's the inner basin, and above it is the M4. I forgot to mention where I parked. There's a lay-by at the entrance to the harbour, and it does say 2 hours free, but I'm going to be longer than that. I was talking to a local and he said he hasn't seen anyone book there, but park there for longer at your own risk. So from the harbour, it's an easy to follow path, tarmac, and instead of going under the M4 there along the road, I'm going to turn in here. It's a bit quieter. Then a right. And we're going to pass under the M4. This part of the walk isn't the most picturesque. The area is still industrial. There's an industrial estate there, But it's not the heavy industry that used to be here. So I'm just about to go under the M4, which is the main route to West Wales. Trust me, the walk does get better. We leave the pylons behind. So after passing under the M4, we come out on a road and we take a left. And this time we go under the old bridge, the A48. The thing is with the old Briton Ferry docks, it's historically important and some areas are listed, but what do you do with it? It's really run down. Is it just going to rot away? There's no money to develop it. So we've gone under the A48, and as we walk down to this little village, there's a rundown looking building. You can tell immediately it used to be a church or a chapel, and it's actually the old Bethesda Independent Chapel. And we take a left here past the front of it. And this road is actually called Church Street. So that's the old chapel. So Church Street, called Church Street not because of the chapel down there, because of this place over here, St Mary's. 1890 this was built, but if you look, the tower is much older. I think the tower is from the 17th century. And there's evidence there was a church on the site going back to the 1200s. You can see the difference in brickwork from the 1890 church and the much older tower. So I've now reached the old canal. And it's a bit overgrown down here. Trust me, it is there. This is a half-a-mile extension of the Neath Canal, and it was known as the Jersey Canal. It was built in 1825 and extended the canal network down to the Briton Ferry Basin and the Briton Ferry Ironworks. We've come to Owen's Row, close to Giant's Grave, and these are old cottages. There's only one or two left, and they housed the customs officers. So this area, Giant's Grave, unusual name. Looking online, some people said it was named after the shipbreakers, because after the war, the First World War, a lot of old ships were taken apart here. The big shipbreakers. There's an inlet to the river, but the name predates that by a long way. It's much older than the First World War. But looking online, Giant's Grave, giants, there's a lot of folklore about giants in the area, so it's just a name, I think. The shipbreaker who was based here was Thomas W. Ward, and they dismantled 94 Royal Navy ships and 197 merchant Navy ships. So it's quite big. I remember as a kid crossing the A48, and if you looked up the river, you could still see ships on the bank up here. So this is Giant's Grave, and before the extension, this used to be the basin here. The Neath Canal work started in 1791, completed in 1794, and I think it closed to traffic in 1921. And we have to cross over here on an old bridge. And the route is really easy to follow. So we cross back over to the left-hand side. When I looked on an old map, this is the area which had a number of dry docks around it. But I can't see any sign of them at the moment. It's so overgrown. On my first walk here, I came across this old arch hidden in the trees. Take a look at this. I couldn't find it on the map. So, Neath, 2 miles. This canal path is also a cycle path, but be careful. There's some very low bridges. Have a look at this one we're coming up to. There's one further on that's even lower. Random shopping trolley. How did that get there? The nearest supermarket's about 2 miles away. So this path continues. The weather's quite nice at the moment. It's not sunny, but it's quite cool for walking, and the rain hasn't started. So I'll catch up with you further on along the canal. I'm going to spoil the magic now. All those dates and the information. I do make notes. I cheat. Here's another low bridge, and this one's only 5'3".
Why do you want to ride underneath it?
I will have to duck. That's lower than 5'3". I don't think I mentioned the purpose of the canal. It was to bring coal down from the upper Neath Valley down to Neath, Giant's Grave, and later on Briton Ferry Ironworks. There are some information boards, not really in a good state, but you can just about read them. So we're coming up to the site of the old metal box factory, a tin plate works, which opened in 1921. It's still not raining. Hopefully I'll get to the castle before it rains. I'm not filming on the way back, so it doesn't matter so much. So just up here, I think we get very close to the river. I think you can actually walk down to the river's edge. Also, when I was planning the walk, looking on the map, around this area, there was a World War II pillbox. And I can't find it. It's a bit overgrown. And on this section, you can actually walk down to the river's edge. So we're heading that way. Not much further to go. I think the castle is just on the bend. We're getting much closer to town now. I can hear the traffic. We've now joined a road alongside the canal. On the other side of the canal, there's some factory. I don't know what that place is. I think I'm now on the outskirts of Neath, and there's lots of industrial units along the canal. That means I haven't far to go. And I can feel the rain. The sign I just passed said 1/4 mile. And the top of the hillsides are getting shrouded in mist now. And this part of the canal is getting really overgrown. Hopefully when I get there, the castle will be open. When I came a few weeks ago, it was closed. It's meant to be open from 10 o'clock. The original castle, there's a rave going on in that factory. The original castle was built in the 12th century by Robert, Earl of Gloucester. But the twin towered gatehouse we're going to see, I think that dates from the rebuilding, and that was in the 14th century. Quite an impressive gatehouse. So we're coming up to a road we have to cross. There's a sign there saying Neath that way, but we're going to stick to the canal. Moose Hall. So we walk this way until we get to Morrison's, and that'll be on our right. So that's Morrison's, the supermarket, and there's a green bridge. We go under that, keep going. I must admit, it was quite an easy walk, excuse the racket. It was quite an easy walk. And there's some information there about the canal. We keep walking. So we go past the information board by the canal. Under this bridge, it's got number 47 on the sign. And you can see another bridge in front of us, and that's where we go up. That's where we leave the canal to get to the castle. I can just make out the castle through the trees. They built it next to Morrison's. Convenient. So this bridge here, up we go. into the Morrison's car park. And just like that, the rain started. The drizzle. Will it be open? It looks like the only thing that's really there is the twin-towered gatehouse. So through Morrison's car park, just up these steps. It's open. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the winter, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the summer. Like with most castles in South Wales, originally built in the 12th century, simple ringwork, probably a timber construction, then developed, made out of stone, and this, I think, dates from the 14th century, the rebuild. It must have been quite impressive. Well, that was my walk from the old Briton Ferry docks, designed by Brunel just before he died, along the half a mile of the Jersey Canal, the Neath Canal, up to Neath itself, and finishing here at Neath Castle. Not too bad, quite an easy walk, even though, like I said, the return journey together is about 4.4 miles each way. It's quite easy. And if you haven't seen my other Briton Ferry walk, where I walk up the incline, I did that a few weeks ago, I'll link that below, worth checking out. So until next time, remember, keep walking. Bye.